Okay. So I think let's start. Our other students can come and join, so that's okay. So good evening, all of you. So we'll continue from the last part, last computer applications class, which we were doing using the slide software, right? Before that, I think most of you guys have submitted the assignments. So those who have not, please do, because I'm closing it today. So that will be done. I hope from the looks of it, it is apparent how it is done. Simple uh, programming of input processing and output was there. So I hope you guys are able to do. Uh, if uh, if any discussion is there that will be required, we can take it up later on for these programs. But for now, what I want to do is because we have just learned about the probabilistic analysis. Uh, hmm. Because we have started the probabilistic analysis, I wanted to show you guys how it is actually done in the software that we were seeing about related to the limit equilibrium method, and what are the parameters that are there, what are the things that we have to take care in that. So we will be just covering up some of the basics in that, and some analysis part that when we do the probabilistic analysis, what are the parameters that we put and what are the type of analysis we can do. Uh, so we in our rock slope lecture we heard about probability of failure. We heard about deterministic and mean factor of safety. We heard about uh, the other factors that are available. Kindly mute yourself, everyone, so that it will be easy. Yeah. So let's start today. Uh, so today we'll start with a basic slope. Uh, like last time, we were able to see what are the basic ways in which we basically simulated a slope. Uh, there are many more intuitive ways. Let's take a very simple example. So, in this software, there is a way in which we can either give coordinates, right, as I explained last time, or we can just draw the boundaries like that. So in boundaries, we add external boundaries. So before that, let me show you another good feature of this. So in the view file, in the view, we can actually produce some grids. So we can actually show some grids which are separated by 5 by 5 uh, meters distance. So that can be helpful for us to just to make our slopes if we want to do it in a visual way. Uh, so now based on what we require, so we can put dots. So if you can see, there are many. The whole area is basically divided into 5 by 5 nodes, and that helps us when we draw for a slope manually and not giving it coordinates on the first go. And a good feature is a snapping feature. So it snaps to these grid points, so it is easy to do. What we'll do in next CAM lab is I will be giving you this cracked software, and we'll be doing it uh, that time. Few of the examples that time. So remind me if I don't tomorrow. I will supply you the software so that you guys can install it and see if any you're facing any problems. Uh, why I am doing this is because the institute also has a license for this software, the latest one. However, that license we are still not able to get you guys accessible from outside NIT. So let's do that here. And when you guys come, you all come here and uh, you have access, then it becomes easier to perform. So, okay, continuing with that, uh, we can start making our slope. So we can make a basic slope maybe uh, with two benches. Let's try that. All right. Mm, let me close this grid because now we don't need it. So we close this grid here, and actually I can edit this because from the base point I want to keep it flat as a base. So this is something like a uh, overburden dump slope where we have basically created small berms and two big slopes and a base, right? So we separate the base from the main dump by adding a material boundary, right? We add a straight material boundary and we assign the second material to it. We'll define these materials later on. So basic slope design is clear, right? Now, what changes we do from the regular analysis is in the project settings. So in project settings, we were seeing the direction, the data that we require, metrics and all that is okay. Methods we can include few more, and we are seeing how many slices will be there. So let's keep those as they are. Now let's not change that. We directly move to the statistics parts. So now you see in the statistics mode, there is a probability analysis. So let's click that, and there are two options. If you click on the down arrow button or the drop down menu, under the sampling method. So sampling method, there are two ways to sample: a Monte Carlo and a uh, this the other method of Latin hypercube. I will tell you both of these and how they are different later on. For now, let's use Monte Carlo that we have learned. So here it is asking number of samples, how many samples I want to simulate. So let's keep it 1000 for now and let's see what happens. So analysis type, it is a global minima analysis or overall analysis. So this basically gives an idea of which type of uh, probabilistic analysis will be done. Now, global minima probabilistic analysis basically means that all the probability variations will be done on the uh, least factor of safety circle that it obtains from the regular analysis. If we click on the overall slope, what it will do is it will do it for all the slip circles that it finds. So if we want to make it quick, we can go for a global minima because that's the highest probability of failure. So for now, let's start with that and we'll see what are the variations, how things change and all. So random numbers, there is something. We'll discuss this as well when we do some analysis part of the probability analysis. And others, I think it's not any worth change. So that's it. So statistics, just we had to start the probabilistic part and click OK. Okay. Now we come to uh, the materials. So properties of the materials. We define the materials. So let's keep the second material that is as base, right? And let's keep that as a good strength material. We don't want to analyze that. We can make overburden maybe. overburden material. We can change some color maybe, and unit weight, because it's of a very fragmented mass, we can actually put it at 19 kilonewton per meter cube. C can be 20 kilonewton, or phi can be like that. That's okay. So now one thing to note here is, based on, like last time we discussed how there are different kinds of failure criteria. We discussed uh, a generalized Hook and Brown failure criteria, or we discussed about the Moore Coulomb that we are already doing. There are many ways in which the program can be given an idea of how the material will fail. So right now, for the most of the probabilistic analysis, we actually assume that this is failing under Moore Coulomb. Uh, and in probabilistic analysis, the parameters that we were discussing, right, the variation in the parameters, that will be done in these variables: the cohesion, the friction, the unit weight, and all. So based on what kind of method we decide, we have the option of varying those. So let's for now let's choose Moore Coulomb and click OK. It has updated the properties, I think. Yes. Now, if you see, there is a statistics tab that is there that was not previously available. So we go to the statistics part, and we click the material. We get a something box, something like this. Now, here we can actually define few things that we discussed in the Monte Carlo simulations. So let me add the material that I want to change the properties of the overburden material, right? So it gives an option to change all the properties of all the materials. So let's do that for overburden for now, because base is not a concern. And which of the variables we want to basically vary the values. So let's put cohesion, phi, and line unit weight. Phi, a Roux coefficient, is actually something related to hydraulic analysis or the geohydrological analysis. So in that, uh, basically gives about the saturation coefficient and how the local water affects the soil. So when we talk about the water or the water related issues in this, we will also discuss that. Okay. So for now we have selected C5 and use unit weight. We click next, and now it asks which kind of statistical distribution we want to give it. The statistical distribution, basically we have already discussed that there are many kinds, and some of the options it is giving, like normal distribution, uniform, triangular, exponential, log normal, gamma, beta, right? Uh, so since now we have an idea what this actually mean, let's just start with the normal function and finish. So once you do that, this kind of a screen pops up. Now it has basically defined three variables that we have already given values of: C, phi, and unit weight. So the values that we have given is considered as the mean of those values. Now we have to basically give how these will vary from mean. So it asks three things: standard deviation, is relative minima, and relative maxima. What it basically means is, standard deviation, we already know that the formula that was there, and basically in a normal distribution we understand that almost 90%, 99% of the values will come under three standard deviation, right? So we choose a standard deviation according to that. So let's suppose our cohesion is 20, right? The mean cohesion, and it is varying from a value of 15 to 25. Let's just, for the sake of this experiment, let's assume that. So the relative minima and relative maxima basically gives how much difference it has from the mean, not the actual values. So in terms of relative minima, basically I will write 5, and maxima also I will write 5. Okay. And what about the standard deviation? Standard deviation, basically what I can do right now, because I want to put it from 15 to 25. And so one side variation is 5. So basically we can have maybe a standard deviation of 1.5, because 1.5 into 3 is 4.5. So we are telling the distribution function to, so that the most of the distribution is between 4.5, uh, below 4.5 differences. Okay. Same we will do about phi. So phi is 30, 35. It can vary basically from 20, 28 to, in very worst condition, we can even go to 40, 42. So variation of maybe 5, 6, 7, 7 variation is there, 7 or 8. So let's vary it from -8 to +8. So relative maximum and minima is -8 to +8, right? And because we want these to be under 3, so it may be around 2.5 standard deviation that can be there. So 3 into 2.5 is 7.5. So we are telling that most of the variation should be in 7.5 and less, right? Similarly for unit weight we are given 19. Unit weight won't vary too much below 19 because then it will be really fragile. So I think we can basically uh, disturb the normal distribution a bit here. So relative minima, let's keep uh, from 19 we can go for maybe 16, so 2. And maxima we can keep 19, so it can go for till 24, so 6. Let's keep it that way. So let's first for now let's put there here as well. Let's see what happens. So 6 and 6, and let's still keep standard deviation as 1.5, and let's click OK. So basically what we have done till now is we have defined how our values are varying. And now what Monte Carlo simulation will do is it will find out 1,000 values based on what kind of parameters we have given, right? So let's click OK. We don't have to do anything else here except maybe define that grid. So in place of grid defining, in either do auto grid, or we can go for surface options and go for auto refined grid that we did last time. So auto refined grid basically does the change of centers with respect to many algorithms that it finds. So how the factor of safety changes, based on that it basically changes the center. So last time we actually had this um, exercise done. So let's use that as well. Click OK. Let's save this. So let's save this as 5 and compute it. So compute, we can do analysis by compute, and very quickly it got computed right now. We didn't even see. So we can interpret using interpret tool now. The main thing is how things are coming. So now you can see the deterministic factor of safety is actually exactly equal to 1. That the deterministic factor of safety basically was, as we understand, the actual factor of safety that we used to do from the regular analysis that we were doing from the previous one. And the mean factor of safety that is obtained by so many analysis is actually very close. It is 1.002, right? So that data is available. Now this says failure probability is actually 50%. So because that is understandable, because mean factor of safety is 1. So if even the distribution is normal distribution, half of the factor of safety will be on the left side, half of the on the right side. So around 50% is quite predictable in that sense, because we have got uh, 1 as a factor of safety. It is basically critically stable or just unstable sort of. We have reliability index. As we were saying, the reliability index basically gives us how far the mean is away from the value of 1 of factor of safety. So since the mean actually here is very close to 1, so we are getting a reliability factor of 0.02 or 0.03 if we round it off. So 0.03 is very, very less. We actually need 100 times higher reliability index for it to be stable, to be considered stable. So that is it. That is what limited data we can get from a single probability analysis. Now the thing is how different it is intuition wise to see a value of factor of safety, a value of probability factor, and a value of reliability index in a comparative way. When we say a factor of safety of 1, we generally say that is the criteria of stability, but it should be more than 1, right? So, intuitively, it feels that it is close to stability, but not stable enough. However, when we go for reliability index and when we say that it should be sufficiently stable, it is very far from it. So reliability index giving up close to 0 or a negative value even. So that means we actually can say it is an unstable slope in that condition, and we have to do some stabilization work. So that is why probability analysis is important, because apart from getting a single deterministic value which we would have got as 1.0 in this case, we actually are getting quite a good variation, and on the basis of that we can understand how things are moving. This is 1.0, so uh, let's uh, let's change some properties to make it somewhere around 1.2 so that I can give you more examples of how the analysis works here. So for doing that, let me change the material properties. In place of 19 as unit weight. Oh, sorry, as in place of 20 as cohesion, let me put it as 40. 35, let's keep it that way. And try to simulate that. Let's see what changes comes up. And if we simulate now, we are getting 1.48, okay? And yeah, so let's take this case for example. Now we have seen how just changing the cohesion has resulted in an increase in the factor of safety, and how the probability of failure from 50% that was there at 1 has suddenly decreased to 3.2% only, and that's a lot of difference in change in probability factor, probability of failure. As compared to that, the increase in factor of safety is hardly not even 0.2. So it's only 0.148 that it has changed. But there is a shocking difference between the 50% probability of failure that we were getting last time to the 3.2% that we are getting this time. And the whole reason behind this is how the distribution of the cohesion, friction, and the final factor of safety that comes up. Now, why I wanted to do this, why I increase the factor of safety here, is because I want to show you all what are the different statistical analysis now we can do. So this is this circle that is represented here is giving us the minimum factor of safety circle. We have other methods as well. Jumbo corrected is there, jumbo simplified is there, right? We will have different values for that. So let's keep any one, let's say jumbo simplified, or let's say jumbo corrected is there. Let's basically analyze on this part. So we go to the statistical part and we have the option of histogram plot. You remember histogram, when we plotted, we basically found out how the frequencies are distributed in our material, right? When we were talking about histogram in our rock slope technology part. Here also we'll do that, but the analysis is already all done by this software. So let's choose which data we want to plot. So we will choose jumbo corrected, right? Number of biases, the number of bins. So bins we let's assume as 30. That's okay. And we want to highlight a portion where factor of safety is actually less than 1. So we will highlight that as well. So let's plot that. And you see how the distribution of the factor of safety is. It's almost a normal distribution, quite similar to that. And a chunk of portion on the left side basically represents uh, what is which areas are prone to failure. And because it is relative frequency, we can actually assume that this area basically represents the probability of failure. However, there are many other ways. Now we can let's see what all analysis we can do. In this, we can actually go for a best fit distribution also. So if you see now clicking on the best fit distribution, it gives a normal distribution kind of way. If this would have been a bit different, we would have a different kind of fitting curve that is there, right? So even in the best fit distribution, as also in the other randomly generated variables, as well as the field variables also that we obtain from various tests, we see that it doesn't actually always meet the best fit curve. It's always up or down, or there is always error that is there, differences that are there. So these are statistical errors that actually vanish when we increase the number of points. So now, right now, the total number of points here were 1,000, right? So if we increase to suppose maybe 5,000 or more, we will see how many randomly generated variables will actually start to fit below this curve, and that becomes more accurate representation uh, of a normal distribution value. So anyways, this was the factor of safety. We can also do few more things in this. If we want to see, so this was for factor of safety. We can also see other variables like if we want to see how many variables were there for the cohesion and how it was distributed. So we can even plot that. So you can see this is the distribution plot for cohesion. So the value we gave, the 40 value we gave was the mean value. And based on our standard deviation and the minima and relative minima and relative maxima, basically it has divided from 35 to 45 because that's what we gave, right? Plus 5 and minus 5 relative minima and maxima. And based on standard deviation, it's basically gave us the height or the peak of this. So similarly, other graphs we can see. You can see phi, how it is distributed. You can even see unit weight, and we can see others as well, different factor of safeties. The good thing about here is we can actually compare which part of the factor of safeties are towards the failure. We can even do it in a range if we want to, between something and something. So 1 and 1.5 if we want to do. So that also works out, right? And uh, so based on what kind of analysis we want to do, suppose we want to see different portions of failure that we want to see. So that also we can do here. This was histogram, right? Similar to what we were doing in the Excel last in the slope stability exercise that we did. We also learned about the cumulative distribution part. So there is also a plot called cumulative distribution. So let's try that. So in cumulative distribution, as if we remember properly what basically it starts totaling all the frequencies, and it gives a curve something on the lines of this. So basically it will reach a probability of 1 finally. So cumulatively it will reach there. And with respect to factor of safety and probability, this curve gives an idea of how each of them is related. So now, why I was focusing very much on this curve last time when we were discussing it in the slope stability class was, uh, see, now we can actually find out from this curve where is the point of failure. That is 1, right? Factor of safety of 1. And what is the probability of failure that we can relate from here? So let us suppose that there is a option, I think here of sampler, right? Yeah. So sampler basically we can actually move it to get the x and y values. So if I put it at 1 right now, right? So if I put it at 1, I can see that at x equals to 1, the value of this cumulative probability is 0.05, 0.045. And 0.045 basically means in percentage 4.5% failure chance. So that's how a probability of failure can be found easily on the basis of a cumulative factor of safety curve. Now, you see here, even it has not calculated the total number of failed samples upon the total number of samples analyzed, as is the formula for probability of failure. Still, you could actually get the probability of failure equal to that value by just finding out the cumulative curve and finding the value of 1 and less. If we want to give a probability of failure in case we consider a threshold factor of safety as 1.5, we can do that as well. So if we go for, because this slope is very critically stable, and right now if the value is only reached till 1.4, so we can say if the criticality threshold is 1.5, it will 100% fail at some point of time. And that's how we can actually judge that how much distribution it has. And there comes the third index that we were talking about, right? The reliability index. Now, in the reliability index, basically, when we were talking about the histograms, right? Is it closed? Okay. In the histograms, we saw that the factor of safety in Jambu corrected. Let's use more bins, maybe 60 bins if works. Yes. Yeah. So if the factor of safety you see, and I plot best fit distribution curve. So, oh, acha. What it shows right now is something different. We want to see which factor of safety is less than 1. So let's plot that. So if you see the mean, which is coming at 1.14, and how far is it from the point where factor of safety of 1 starts? So even we can just to draw something. I think we can draw something. Say no. Okay, not here. Okay. Anyways, so we see how much in terms of standard deviation it is very close or closer. The factor of safety of 1 is closer to the mean as compared to what we keep it as acceptable value of 3 or more, right? So if we see in this, basically the standard deviation, it says of the fit on the below. If I don't know if you guys can see, it's very small written here in the bottom side. It is written that normal mean is 1.14, that is this part, right? And the standard deviation it is given as 0.08. So 0.08 basically represents a one standard deviation. So if 1.14, 0.08, so the difference between 0.08 and minus 0.08 and plus 0.08 has around 67% or 66% of data. Now, what the reliability index is saying simply that after standard deviation of 1.7 times the standard deviation, I am reaching the factor of safety of 1. So basically it says that how close the failure condition is from the ideal condition. So ideal condition for very safe slopes we consider as Ri equals to 3 or more. So in this case we also see that it is not, even though it is stable in terms of factor of safety as well as probability of failure, we see that there is still some chance, and there is still the reliability factor is still not up to the standard mark we can sometimes say as uh, a definitive indication of a stable slope. So when we go for these kind of analysis, the probability analysis, we actually are getting many more criterias basically to say that, okay, in terms of factor of safety, I'm getting a value of 1.14. In terms of failure probability, I am getting a very low value of 4.5%. So right now the probability of failure of your slope is less. However, the reliability is also less. It's not up to the standard that generally a stable slope is considered in. So there will be requirements of further stabilization. How much reliability is less or less than 3 dictates how urgently stabilization measures have to be given. Okay. So this was one about the histograms as well as the cumulative functions, and that's how we do a simple probability analysis in using limit equilibrium method and this software. There are a few things I want to still show you more. One thing is, if you see in the statistics, there is a scatter plot. If you see the scatter plot, as you know, basically gives a relationship between one value to another. So if we see factor of safety versus if we see the relation between phi and factor of safety, we can easily see how well a relationship is established, because we know the formula for factor of safety imbibes C equals to sigma tan phi, right? So phi is anyways a good, quite a direct correlation. So it gives a good correlation between that. And we also know few things like if we want to see other relations like cohesion. So cohesion, though not that much of a good correlation is there between factor of safety, but it generally affects more. So even in terms of hey, what am I doing? Sorry. Okay. So my mistake. That x-axis is factor of safety. Y-axis we are changing, right? So y-axis in phi we saw. So even when we plot this, we can actually see which are the values that are giving us a factor of safety that is critical, and which are the values that are giving us a factor of safety that are more than that non-critical part. And the good thing is, even in this, the basic regression analysis is already done. So a correlation coefficient of 0.96, that is the R value that we were discussing, right? The R square and R values. So R value is 0.96, and 96 is good correlation with A and B, alpha and beta as the slope and the intercept point. So intercept point is given and the slope is also given. So basically they are giving this equation of this line and how much good a fit it is. So we can see other correlations as well. Unit weight, how it is dependent, not that much. It is generally going down, but the correlation is poor. even for the cohesion. So the Jambu method highly is dependent on the phi values that we see, right? Even the other methods are similar. It's not changing that much. It's just that some adjustments are there that are done in those. So that is there. One thing I want you guys to understand, even between these factors, suppose like cohesion and friction, you see there is hardly any correlation, like 0.02. Basically, a negative value of coefficient also can indicate uh, a non-correlation or a zero correlation. Basically, negative value basically indicates that even a average line could be a better correlation than this line. So generally these values, the C and the phi, are in this case not correlated, right? It is basically random distribution between, there is no relation between C of a material and phi of a material in this example. However, in actual practical scenarios, these both values are generally related. So in standard rock conditions, if in different kinds of materials, generally what happens is if C is more, the phi is less, and vice versa. So there is that's why a complete uh, C plus sigma tan phi gives a strength. So something like a inverse relation is there. That also we can do in this. Let's see if we can do in this. In the statistical part, uh, if we click the materials, yes, there is an option for correlation, right? And yeah, so it gives a coefficient of correlation, basically a minus 0.5 if you see here. I apply that. So what it will do is, now when it generates random variables, basically it will have some correlation coefficient. So if I maybe say that let me increase this coefficient of correlation to 8.8 and then click OK. Just analyze this again, and I do the interpret work again that we were doing, right? And now you see the mean has actually improved, and so has the probability factor. Oh, sorry, the probability of failure. Now, why this is because many of the cohesion and friction values have actually adjusted themselves to basically be in a correlation. I'll show you how this is. So let's plot something between cohesion and friction now. So when you see, last time it was basically not correlated at all. Now we have a good correlation factor of almost 0.78, right? So this basically is a representative idea of how naturally things are related to each other. So cohesion and friction are generally related, and based on that, if we see how the histograms have changed, so they have basically become quite precise as compared to last time. So let's try that. So you see how the larger number of values are towards the mean, and a lower number of values are uh, towards the edges. And if we put a best fit curve, we can see that even the standard deviation, uh, if I think the factor of safety of 1 has actually moved to a next standard deviation. Let's see the reliability. Yeah, so reliability index has actually improved to 1.98, has almost reached to 2. So that also shows how the distribution of values changes, the distribution of the factor of safety, uh, as well as the reliability of the whole analysis. So this is basically all this analysis is basically to reach to as close as possible to the real value, right? The field values. Mm. Few things more I want to show you before we take on some questions is there is one thing which we didn't see. So now just keep in mind when we do analyze, sorry, when we do analyze and we see histograms, right, of factor of safety, and we plot best fit function. See how, as I was saying, how there are some differences between the actual fit, the best fit, and the actual values, right? So the actual values are quite not exactly matching the best fit, and this is kind of, as I said, if I keep on increasing the number of variables, the number of random variables, this should improve, right? So let's try and do that. Let's see what happens if I increase the number of variables from 1000 to maybe 5000. So in project settings, I have just changed the number of variables to 5000 and do the same analysis again. Just save it and analyze it. Right, it takes a little bit more time, and if I go for interpret, Uh, not much change will be there in the results because distribution is such that it is basically giving a good enough answer. But if you go for the histogram plots, you see that it actually starts to come closer and closer to the best fit curve, right? So if we keep on increasing the number of variables, basically it will keep on becoming more and more precise and give us a more well-distributed curve. Now, what I wanted to show you here was there was another function apart from Monte Carlo. So in the sampling method, you see there is this Latin hypercube. Now, what this does is basically in place of what we are doing in Monte Carlo, we are increasing the number of samples, and randomly variables that are generated are basically trying to reach the actual fit, actual fit of the normal distribution. This one gives a much better fit as compared to a Monte Carlo simulation. I will show you how. So let's keep that first as 1000, or let it be directly 5000. We'll see how the difference is, right? So let's use that and try and analyze now. You see, if I open the interpret part and I go for the statistics histogram plot, this one is actually just for the 5000. It is much better fit as compared to the previous one. Maybe I can put something side to side and that will be much better visually. Let's do that. So this one is, let's save it as another name. So this one is Qt 5, right? So this analysis is by Latin. Let's keep it at 1000 back and click OK. We want to compare it with another one. First, let's process that. Oh, no. Let's process that. This is for Latin, right? And we change it to Monte Carlo. Click OK, and we save it as another file to just show you all how both are having different behaviors. So both are processed now. Let me open this first. This one is by Monte Carlo, and I plot the histograms. All right. Okay, hold on. Yeah. So suppose this is for cohesion, right? And let's open the other file that had the hypercube function. Oh. No. So somehow it's not responding. Let me make it respond. Hold on. Yep. So this one is the original one with uh, sim 5.1, and we want 5 as well. Open up, please. Yes. So both we have. Now we plot histogram for this cohesion plot, and you can actually see how different these are. Let me put them side to side. Oh, this is for hypercube method, the distribution that it tried, right, for the same number of variables, and this is by the Monte Carlo simulation. So that's why this is that's the difference. It has same number of variables we had, like 1,000 variables we tried, but the way in which it is distributed is quite different, and that's the advantage of hypercube method, because it distributes the input parameters very well as compared to the input parameters uh, in the Monte Carlo simulation, because random variables are generated. So that's a difference in this method. One more thing I want to show before I take on some questions if they are there is the random variable thing, right? So you might understand that all these processes are basically they are generating new variables based on some random variables that are generated. So those who have some idea basically understand. But to give you a general idea, uh, in when we generate new values after giving probability distribution function to this Monte Carlo simulation, what happens is basically we are giving some seed variable, and it is finding a random variable like between 0 and 1, any value between 0 and 1, and based on that value basically it is finding the location of that value in the cumulative curve that we saw for the normal distribution curve. So if I say that I got the random value of point 0.5, so basically it will give us the mean as the output value. If I say it has a random value of 0.25, it will give us somewhere between the first standard deviation and the second standard deviation for that. So the generation of these random variables is done by certain algorithm, and there are many algorithms on which these generation of random variables are there. So because our number of random variables are limited, like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, whichever variable gets generated first basically fits into our matrix of cohesion, friction, and unit weight, right? So what is the basis and how it is happening? Because every time it should change, right? Because every time new random variable should be generated. So there are two methods if you see here that for random number generation. One is pseudo random number generation, right? And there is a actual random number generation. Pseudo random variable, what it does is uh, the algorithm basically for any random variable generation, it requires a seed variable, a starting point from which it, based on so many formulas, it calculates next random variable and next random variable and so on. So suppose I give it a value of 1, so it has some very complex formula of 1 into 0.5 into 0.25 divided by this divided by that, and it finds out some random variable. On that random variable, that will act as a seed value for the next random variable and so on, right? So giving a seed value makes it a pseudo random variable because basically we are not keeping it as fully random, right? So that is why when you analyze using pseudo random variable, every time the probability of failure, the factor of safety will remain quite close to what we do in each time we analyze it. But if we do for random variables, actual random variables, and we find there is a rand function that is there. There are other ways as well. And if we analyze that, so each analysis will actually reveal us a different set of variables. Let's show you what I actually mean. Now, because I have selected rand, a different one. So now you can see there is slight change in RI, there is slight change in FS as well. See, so RI is actually moved to 1.89 while it was 1 point very close to 2 that time, last time, right? So, and if I do it again, let's close it and do it again. Basically, there will be some changes, not very much, but some changes to the actual value. So now it is 1.93 RI and RI change, and even the probability of failure has changed a bit. So when we go for actual random variables generation, things will change based on how many times we do. Each time it will have new random variables, and based on new random variables, new data will be generated. Uh, that's why sometimes pseudo random analysis is done, because we want to basically repeat the experiment, show the reproducibility of that experiment. So I will stop here. I think even the time is almost over. This basically gave us a picture of how a probabilistic analysis is done very simply using available softwares. The whole concept behind that is how the variables are generated, what is the difference between just calculating a factor of safety in a deterministic way and finding many more things like probability factor, reliability index, and so on. And what are its ways of basically manipulating uh, changes in the program with respect to what actually happens in the field. So I'll stop here for you. We'll be taking this ahead tomorrow as well. Maybe we'll introduce some problems related to water and how water interaction happens in this. And if time permits, we'll take on the stabilization problem like bolting and how that is taken care in this. Okay. In this week, we will try and keep this part, the slide part, as much as possible. And in next week, we will take it further to other applications. Okay. So that's it from me. If any of you have any questions, do feel free to ask now. Nope. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. I understand it might not be very much hands-on right now. So that's why tomorrow I'll be giving you this software. So you guys can keep on analyzing, keep on trying few tutorials that are very easy to do. So let me send the software tomorrow, and we'll actually do it all together in the lab class that we have on Thursday. So that it will become very intuitive and very easy software and can do very powerful stuff. So so that will be much more interesting. Okay, guys. Thank you for coming, and you guys can take your next class now. We'll see you tomorrow for the same CAM class at 2:15 then. Thank you.